Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with an obituary. Yes, with the emphasis on the bitch. Well, not exactly. This time, this is actually very sad. I mean, I don't want to be dismissive or too jocose about the whole situation, because we just lost Michael Tilson Thomas. And Michael Tilson Thomas was 80, 81, somewhere in there. And he died from glioblastoma, which is an absolutely horrible malignant form of brain cancer. I mean, I had people I know who've died from glioblastoma, and it's absolutely terrible in every possible way. There's nothing that you can say that's other than tragic when that happens. The only possible bright spot is that at least he made it to 80. My father made it to 80. That was like, we thought that was a life well lived. And certainly Michael Tilson Thomas had a life well lived. But what some of you may not know, and what makes this all the more, I think, really sad, is that his husband, Joshua Robeson, who is the brother of the flutist Paula Robeson, he passed away in February from complications arising from a fall that he took at some point earlier in the year, and that must have been terrible, because I mean, Michael Tilson Thomas outlived him and was desperately ill, but around long enough to see his husband pass before him. And my heart goes out to everybody associated with that. It really does. I just think that's incredibly awful, the way this whole thing went down. I know that I've already seen some of the PR coming out, about, how fabulous they were and how terrific. And they were. I mean, they were an amazing couple. They met when they were 11 and 12, respectively, and were together their whole lives. They only got married, actually, I think it was like in 2014 or something like that, but they were together the whole time. And Joshua Robeson was Michael Tilson Thomas's manager and supporter, and they were a serious musical power couple, and one of the best, actually. And so to have them both go like this, in a short distance from each other, and I don't know what to say about it. There are no words for this sort of situation. Michael Tilson Thomas was a tremendously gifted conductor. Leonard Bernstein probably, gave him the ultimate accolade at one point. He said, "Oh, he sounds like me," which is, coming from Leonard Bernstein, that's about as powerful a recommendation as you get. And he was, in some ways, a conductor who grew up in Bernstein's shadow, sort of an American, razzle-dazzle type guy. He was a little bit more specific, I think, in his specialties, in his taste, than Bernstein was. Bernstein, of course, was an amazing generalist conductor who could do just about anything. Tilson Thomas was never much for, the German standard repertoire. His Beethoven cycle with the English Chamber Orchestra was not very great. He didn't do much Haydn or Mozart at all. His Schumann, which he did in San Francisco, came, I think, too late. I really do, because later in his career, he became somewhat fussy and micromanaging, as so many conductors do. It's a whole other really topic, whether the excellence of orchestras, their ability to play anything very, very well these days, and sort of deny conductors the credit for it because they're just great, encourages conductors to become fuss budgets. Or maybe it's just as they get older, they start focusing on minutia at the expense of the bigger picture. It's a very, very complex and subtle question, but it's worth considering at some point, maybe not particularly in this context. Tilson Thomas left a very distinguished discography. He was superb at contemporary music and American music. I mean, his Ives was amazing. His Gershwin was terrific. In Buffalo, you may recall, when he wasn't getting arrested for possession of cocaine at an airport. Remember that? That was kind of fun. He actually did, the complete Ruggles, which was definitely not going to earn money, but he did. And he did Sun Treader twice, first with the Boston Symphony and then his remake in Buffalo. His initial recordings on Deutsche Grammophon with the Boston Symphony were absolutely stupendous. I mean, wonderful. His Rite of Spring is still phenomenal. He did that a couple of times too. He was an amazing Stravinsky conductor. He really was. He was a superb pianist. So, he was able to do quite a bit, in both as early in his career as a piano accompanist, basically, and then as a conductor. But his Boston legacy is great. There was the Piston Second Symphony, and like I said, the Ruggles and the Ives Three Places in New England. Just beautiful, beautiful performances with an orchestra that really responded to him. He was amazing in Russian repertoire. His Tchaikovsky was terrific. He did the 4 Tchaikovsky orchestral suites at a time when nobody was paying attention to them, and the Antal Dorati performances were long out of print. So that was that was wonderful, and he was always interested in doing niche repertoire that other conductors weren't doing. I mean, things that you wouldn't expect. With the LSO, he did the Glagolitic Mass. He did Kurt Weill's Seven Deadly Sins with Julia McGinnis Johnson. And well, I mean, that's the point. When it comes to some of the rarer repertoire, you have to have it done really, really well to make the case. And he always made the case. He always managed to put over the product, I think, with great gusto and emphasis. His French music was exquisite. He was a fabulous conductor of Debussy and Ravel. His Debussy particularly was just gorgeous. And he did it in Boston and London and San Francisco. And it was always sensational, which shows you, I think, that it was him. It was all him. It wasn't the orchestra. It was his sensitivity to timbre, to balance, to rhythm. Really, really exceptional work he did there. Eventually, like so many conductors do, he wound up doing a Mahler cycle. It had its ups and downs. Again, it wasn't free from his fussy tendencies. I remember seeing him do the First Symphony at Carnegie Hall, where he was, very, very careful with dynamics, and the result was that, especially in the finale, passages that should have simply poured forth with complete uninhibited abandon were over-controlled. And that definitely happened later in his career. But he had an incredibly long career. An extraordinary career. And I think that of modern conductors, his discography is really some of the most distinguished, because at the end of the day, Beethoven aside, he did not make recordings of works that he didn't feel strongly about or that he couldn't conduct extremely well. And so, he was another example of a conductor who was able to make a very distinguished career for himself without having to do the German standard repertoire. And I think that's really, really interesting. I mean, when he did Brahms, when he did German standard repertoire, he did the serenades, and he did them extraordinarily well. I mean, he really did. So, that's a smart conductor, not just somebody who's doing all of the expected things. And because he didn't do the expected things, it could be that his recordings and his career wasn't promoted as strongly as it might be. That's always a possibility, because when you do the usual stuff, then your record labels really get behind it and promote the crap out of it. But hey, he did what he did. More than that, and more importantly even than the recordings, I think, was the 25 years he spent in San Francisco. That's rare. That was a genuine marriage made in heaven. The orchestra, the conductor, they found each other. And again, he was smart enough to stick with it. He did other things. Of course, they all did other things. He founded the New World Symphony in Florida, which was a wonderful endeavor, and made some recordings with them on Argo. You may recall there was that wonderful tangazo disc of dance things with Hinastera and Latin music. He did all that stuff wonderfully. He made a stunning Villa-Lobos Bachianas Brasileiras recording for RCA with the New World Symphony. Lasted in the catalog for about 5 seconds. It's a shame that RCA dumped him because his RCA recordings, we had, the Copland series, the discs of the Populist and the Modernist. It was a wonderful series, and we had and his Stravinsky stuff, and the Prokofiev Romeo and Juliet music. He was absolutely at the top of his form. His Berlioz Symphonie Fantastique was phenomenal. I mean, Stravinsky's Persephone. Whoever paid any attention to Persephone, his recording of that is glorious, absolutely masterful. It revives our faith in the music, as if that were needed. So he will be missed. He will definitely be missed. He has a career that deserves to be taken seriously, deserves to be respected. I can't make fun of it in any way. He was just too good. There are artists out there who are just the real deal. And whatever personal quirks or attitude or whatever else they may have had, Michael Tilson Thomas was the genuine article. A phenomenal, dedicated musician who left a legacy that has measurably improved the musical universe in which we live. And not a lot of conductors can say that. He will definitely be missed, but he had, like I said, a life well lived. Beautiful, wonderful career, and he leaves a really impressive legacy for all of us to cherish. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.